Hello everybody, it is me, Pacific. Oh yes, got a bad case of bedhead, so the lights are off. I mean, hey, we all gotta put forth an image, right? I put forth a real classy image. Shirtless, just who I am, and hey, there's no pretension here. But that's what makes this channel somewhat of a success. I wanted to talk about a viewer that got my attention, leaving comments, and then I clicked on her videos, and she's got a plethora of videos called dumpster diving finds. I'm like, well, this is interesting. When Pacific used to walk home from school in Mammoth, we used to hit dumpsters, my cousin, my friends. We found all kinds of cool stuff. I remember I found a Curios display rack. I carted it home, found a big old varnished table with the coins varnished and seashells underneath. We tried so hard to break that varnish to get the coins and the shells out of there, and you couldn't do it. But as a kid, I used to climb in dumpsters. I'd never think of adults doing it. This lady, though, has found entire boxes of unopened food, cubes of butter. She's gone to the stores just when they've thrown it all in the dumpsters, and when the back door shuts, she and her friends go to work and clean out the dumpsters. Boxes of cereal, energy bars, Red Bull. Toys R Us has gone behind Michael's. And the reason I comment on this, there's something wrong in an affluent nation like ours when stores, instead of just giving it to the local food bank or handing it out to somebody or letting somebody come by and pick it up. Now, I will tell you, where I work, there's a lady and a gentleman. I find it interesting. The gentleman is from Pakistan, and he goes down to the Safeway stores and gets their about to expire or day old bread and gets boxes of this stuff. I have taken home bottles of apple juice, canned beans, all kinds of stuff, flour, stuff that there's nothing wrong with. Let's see, garlic bread, sourdough bread, regular bread sliced, all kinds of specialty breads, and some of them haven't even expired. And I will tell you that our whole break room manages to clean out all of it. Jars of coffee, all kinds of things. My Filipina friend has made off with all kinds of free groceries. At least that store lets people in the community of Denver go and get stuff and take the stuff that they would normally toss and take it to our workplace or to churches. But then there's a plethora of stores. They don't want liability. They don't want to hassle with it, so they simply toss it in the trash. This woman's video channel has cases and boxes of this stuff, and you're just like, why would a country like this throw this kind of stuff in the dumpster? Contrast that to Manila. I watched a video documentary on a woman who, her and her husband, go into the trash cans in the back alleys of Manila and pick out scraps of food. Half-eaten whatever. And they just collect it and throw it into one container. This is going to shock you, viewers, but she takes that, she cooks it, she prepares it, and turns around and resells it at a pittance. And Filipinas and Filipinos buy it. No way of knowing if this is diseased. I'm sure people get sick. But when we have poverty that deep and wide in the Philippines, and places like Michael's, Toys R Us, not that we need the toys, people can live without that, but grocery stores are throwing away unexpired cube sticks of butter, boxes of General Mills cereals, granola bars, potato chips, pop, all kinds of things. And you think, wow. There is a certain aspect of our capitalistic society that the big corporate gurus don't want to help people at all. They'd rather write the stuff off as an insurance loss than give it to somebody, which could be written off as a donation to charity. I have to say to this woman, and I have not mentioned her name because I didn't ask for permission to do so, her resourcefulness is amazing. Why is it that we in this country, with so much need all around us, are so deaf to it? When people will pay $60 to $100 for a far seat up and out of the way at the Broncos Stadium, and people will pay $100 for a ski lift ticket, not counting their gas to get their food, meals, lodging. And a woman feels good about dropping a quarter into the hand of a panhandler on a corner, feels good about herself while driving off in a $65,000 SUV. What is wrong with us? What do you do with a woman who claims to be full of the Holy Spirit, who's in her 80s, and when a hailstorm comes, stands at the back window rebuking and commanding in the name of Jesus for the hailstorm to leave because she doesn't want her precious garden damaged? And that same woman can watch the evening news with a 2004 tsunami and go, yeah, boy, that's terrible. But her garden takes more priority than 200,000 lives by angry seas. When I talk about America, people say, you're anti-American. I'm not. But when you get your eyes open and you step outside of our comfort zone over here, you're not going to be comfortable. When Pacific stood in Iloilo, in western Visayas, on Panay Island in the Philippines in 2008, we were waiting for a lady whose nickname was Bing Bing. You know what? This gnat is going to die. We were standing outside S&M Mall, a fairly new mall. Security guards around every door. Security guards in virtually in front of every store within the mall. I had asked Beth, why are there so many security guards? She said, because people steal. And there's so much crime. Across the street from this mall, now mind you, when we have big malls in the U.S., there's nothing but anchor stores around there, Old Navy and Barnes & Noble and Starbucks and movie theaters and shopping centers all around. When they built that mall in the Philippines, the mall is materialism and right across the street is poverty and tin roofs. It was such a sharp contrast that it bothered me. We were standing outside the mall, and as many of you know, Asia is always a sardine sea of humanity. You're just packed in. Multitudes. We don't even know what that word means, but Jesus did, and I do. Multitudes of people were walking past us, and being that I was the only white guy, everybody was looking at me. People came up immediately and said, "You have any peso?" Asking me for money. And I just shook my head. Kind of used to this in the U.S., right? Then an 8-year-old girl with dirty hair comes up and thrusts her hand in my stomach. I told you this before. And I said, no. She doesn't move. Her hand is firmly pressed into my gut. I said, Beth. And I point. And Beth says something in Tagalog to her. The young lady's undeterred. Finally, Beth pulls out a couple pesos, throws them into her hand. She runs after she takes them. Then a guy comes up with no legs. Then an older couple comes up and says, God bless you, could you please help us? And then people start coming. Lots of them. And I said, Beth, we need to go in the mall now. She goes, we have to wait here for Bing. And I said, I know, but can we wait in the mall and look out the window? There's security guards in there. Finally, Bing shows up, and the first thing out of her mouth is, Beth, why you have Michael standing out here? You know they mug women here for purses. He's an American. This is not safe. And I'm like, wow, thanks for saying that, Bing Bing. Many of you will say, well, Pacific, why didn't you give them money? Has any of you thought of what would happen if I pulled my wallet out with that many people surrounding me? Let's get real here. I would have never seen it again. Somebody would have lunged for it and taken it. There is that chance. Lose my driver's license, passport, all the money in there, my ID, my credit cards. No, you don't do that. That memory is emblazoned upon my mind because those people, guy with no legs, they don't have welfare there like we do. They don't have Section 8. In Manila, the term shantytown takes on a whole new meaning there. Shacks with corrugated tin, jammed up against each other, people living in the multiple thousands. When a fire breaks out, the whole shantytown goes up in a puff of smoke. The death toll is staggering. America at its absolute worst does not know poverty like this. And stores throw food in the trash. What do you viewers think that God thinks of all that? Let me say something again that's not going to set well with the business world. Corporate people. People that are in corporate. People climbing the ladder. Climbing the corporate ladder. Stepping on others together. They don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about me. They don't have compassion. Corporate is synonymous with greed. Corporate is synonymous with huge greed. And because of that, and I'm looking for something to swat this gnat because I am getting annoyed. I do not like gnats and I do not like bugs when they're crawling on my screen. The kind of poverty I saw in the Philippines was mentally disturbing to me. I did not feel comfortable with it. Nor should any of us. Life has a way of teaching us things if we let it. But what do you do? What do we do with poverty that deep and that wide? Wow, this guy is hard to get. He's fascinated by the light of my screen. There are corporations that donate, but more of that is based on a tax write-off rather than true compassion. I get annoyed when people say, oh, but Pacific, that star gives a lot of money away. I have a hard time with that because I look at how much they keep for themselves. Did I fail to mention Oprah Winfrey? She's a multi-million-dollar empire. A self-appointed guru, know-it-all of nothing. Let me say that again. A self-appointed guru, know-it-all of nothing. Some people think that Oprah Winfrey's brilliant. I don't. I think with the dumbing down of America, that it was easy for people to swoon over her. And we talk about people that care for the underdog or claim to. Reverend Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, I could list a whole bunch of people. But you don't see them living in the ghetto. You don't see them living with their peers that they claim are the victims of racism and abuse by a white domineering society. No. They're living the same American dream any white people are. They live in their safe, gated communities and drive or chauffeured limousines. It is a hypocritical joke. And for somebody to pat themselves on the back while living the good life by dropping a quarter in a panhandler's hand, people get mad at me for saying this, but I don't think God looks at that and smiles and says, well, that was nice. What did Jesus have to say about the widow? She put in a widow's mite. And what did Jesus have to say about her? I tell you that she gave more than all of these people did. Let's be honest. How about if Pacific is honest? Giving is hard. It's hard because when it comes to money, money's a real test of where we're at. I don't like it when people ask me for money. A woman the other day, a coworker, said, man, I don't even know if I can make it home tonight. I just got this job. I've been out of money. And I'm going to be driving on fumes. And if I run out of gas, I'm not coming to work tomorrow. She drives an economical car, and I talked to her, and just before we parted ways to go back to our buses, I took out a 20 and said, go get yourself some gas and don't pay it back. Really? Oh, man, no way. I said, yeah, I said, you don't need to be missing work. That goes against you. She came up to me next door and said, no, I'm not letting you give this to me. I'm going to pay back. I said, you don't have to. But at least she offered. I'm not doing that to grandstand how wonderful Pacific was, because much of the time, I don't want to let go of my money. I work hard for it. And I see so much illegitimate wasting. I was talking to a friend of mine from Cleveland yesterday. We're talking about missionaries, and something that really rubs me wrong is watching American missionaries go to another country and impose and push their American culture, their American interests on a community of people that have no interest. It's like you're there to take the message of the good news, not American brainwash. And one of the things that's made a lot of countries mad about missionaries coming over there, and the reason they're forbidding them entry, is not because they're anti-God, but because they're tired of a culture being pushed on them. Missionaries now have to go under the cloak of a work visa and have a viable job and then do the missions on the sides. I don't think that's such a bad idea. But I've also read stories of missionaries. I was going to Riverside Baptist Church in the 90s and then the early 2000s down near downtown Denver, and a Mexican family that lived in Denver, or California, excuse me. They were drumming up mission support, and they had a video saying, we're trying to raise money, meaning the churches raise it and give it to them, that we want to pay for all of our stuff, our TVs and our furniture and our bedroom sets to be shipped to Mexico. And I am looking at my then wife saying, you're a missionary in Mexico and we're going to pay thousands of dollars to ship all your American furniture and goods and comfort zone down there? When I went to Sai Wan Ho Baptist Church in Hong Kong, the pastor there was a Filipino and he was dynamic. A few weeks later, a very overweight old man losing his eyesight and his equally overweight wife, both from Texas. They always talked about Texas to 230 Filipinos that know nothing about Texas. He put his arm around a guy named Peter, who lived both in the UK and Scotland, and I liked Peter. He was a gentleman. He dressed up in the suit and tie. He'd say, hello, Michael. And I always thought, what a neat guy. He loved the Lord. He's a nice guy. He's an expat working and living in Hong Kong. This big American preacher put his arm around him in front of everybody and say, I like Peter, but the funny thing is the Brits don't know how to dress. And he'd always make jokes. And I could tell by watching Peter that he was being polite, but I had to think it flustered him. And he said, yep, Rusty's maturing. That was the pastor's name. But, we're not ready to let him go yet. It's not quite God's time to take over. And I thought, why are we spending big money to have... And the guy was complaining about his eyesight, medical problems, health problems. And I'm going to tell you, viewers, I read a lot of stuff about all these old people out there on the front lines. Some missionaries are living better than Pacific is in Colorado. Why is that? I thought the gospel and serving was supposed to be sacrifice. Some of them are living better than me. Some of these missionaries go over there with their lily white kids and want private schools for them and big money for that and want the accoutrements and everything so that they won't feel like they're missing out on American culture. Whoa, hold it. How about if you guys wake up and realize the best thing you can do for your kids is get them out of American culture and start the process of deprogramming them. I will tell my viewers, in some countries I could live on $15,000 a year. Total food, clothing, and shelter. If somebody wants to write me an annual check to do that, I'm out of here. I'll go preach the gospel. I'll help dig a water trench to get water piped into a village. I'll do what I got to do. Providing I can handle the climate, I'll do the best I can. I read to you viewers about a couple that was over in China, an American couple complaining about the squatty potty in the place they were in. So they were paying money, missions donated money, to have that ripped out and a standard toilet bowl put in. And that they were very concerned about the big Buddha statue in the living room. This was a rented place, by the way. And they said, this Buddha in here really bothered us because we don't believe in those gods. And I'm like, you know what? This is the difference between Pacific. If I'm living in China and God's supporting me there, I'll deal with a statue icon sitting in the living room. If I really don't want to watch it, I'll hang a blanket down in front of it and block it from view. That's somebody else's place. I'm renting it. I'm a guest there. The squatty potty? Oh my gosh, if that was the biggest stressor I had to contend with, I'll sit on the floor to go to the toilet. Or squat. I'm going to say something. A lot of people have no business being in missions. If you have a love for the raw, the wild, the unsterile, if you can take a shower under a dribbling faucet head hanging out in the center of the village, realizing that half the village is going to see you nudie, and you can deal with that. If you can have a heart for people and sacrifice our comfort zone over here, and know you won't have air conditioning or heating systems, that you won't be able to download your iTunes and won't be able to BlackBerry somebody, then maybe you need to go into missions. If you can live on a shoestring budget and be happy and content because people are getting saved and people are smiling at you and saying, tell us about God, then you need to go into missions. True missionaries suffer hardship. And I see so much administrative bullcrap going on. People that wear suits and ties that get to go to a foreign country that aren't doing anything, but they're the administrator over the administrator over the administrator. I'm like, have we become just like the secular world? You better believe it. Let's talk about Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis. Outstanding materials. Outstanding ministerial tools. Ken Ham started off as a simple guy, going to universities and colleges and telling people that evolution wasn't true and proving it. He had a huge forum. And though people taunted and jeered, many at the universities were deeply affected by what he said and went over to Christ. Then one day I see a newsletter from Ken Ham, and on the top it says, Ken Ham, CEO and founder of Answers in Genesis. Oh goody, now we got Christians don't want to feel left out by the world, so now we're going to title ourselves as CEO. And guess what happened next? All of a sudden newsletters beating on the giving drum. Because now, Mr. Ham says, we need to open up a creation science museum. A museum that cost millions of dollars. A museum that was a fight to get zoning ordinance approval for the museum down in Kentucky, I believe it is. It's been a drama. And with all due respect, the majority of the people that go to this museum are parents that homeschool their children. Sadly, homeschooled children could go to the museum in California at La Brea Tar Pits and be taught an outstanding education. The Christian teacher can just say, you see all this stuff that says millions of years? We don't ascribe to that, and here's why. Too many Christians have become empire builders and want to make a name and a monument for themselves. And I'll tell you why I believe this about Ken Ham. I met him in person. He was a crusty son of a gun. He came to Riverside Baptist Church. I went up with enthusiasm. I had loved his seminars because that's how I got saved, was being told the truth about evolution. I said, I really believe in what you're doing. His response was crusty. And my first thought is, oh, I'm not a big financial contributor. I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt. I'm a nobody. Let me tell you something about CEOs. Experientially, they're kind of cold-blooded. And when Christians want to get caught up in doctorates and CEOs and titles, you know, it's funny. I told you guys years ago I was a lot boy. Does anybody know what a lot boy is? Car dealerships. Lot boy, he moves the cars, pulls it up for the customer, puts the little, temporary floor mats in there, washes and shines it, puts a little gas in it, gets the car ready for the customer, sets up the display lot. Car's dead, goes and has the battery charged or replaced, whatever. I did that with commercial trucks. And one day my boss introduced me to some people he was showing me to and said, this is our lot technician. And after everybody left, I said, lot technician, Chuck? He says, yeah. I said, that's like saying a dishwasher's a ceramics engineer. You notice in America, people just don't want to hear things called the way they really are. I remember years ago there was a Christian group named Servant. I was like, well, there's a first. I'd like to see somebody who's big and all that and a bag of chips. And what is your profession? Servant of the Most High God. Do you notice nobody says that? And you can do that and draw attention yourself too, so we have to be careful. But, oh, I'm Dr. Pastorate so-and-so of this Bible college. Just, you know what? What does this have to do with dumpster diving? It has to do that America just doesn't see straight anymore. We're drunk. We're drunk on our comfortable material success. We're throwing entire, usable, solid, good food in the trash can. We're paying and sending gargantuan sums of money to overseas missionaries that are living the American dream abroad. And I have a problem with that. Pacific could live on a shoestring and live somewhere. But they would not send me because mission organizations would say, well, you're divorced. Materialism is okay in the modern evangelical church. It is endorsed, it is accommodated, and it is funded by God's people giving God money. When I thought of that couple at Riverside, I looked at my wife then and said, I cannot believe that these people are in the mission field and wanting their television sets and bedroom sets and and it always works because they bring up, we don't want our kids to suffer. And Americans, they immediately think, oh, kids in a foreign country, that's so terrible. No. Why don't you have the kids live like everybody else lives, and maybe then they won't be stuck up, narcissistic, spoiled little brats with little girls sitting there glued to their text messaging and their stupid little Facebook and their stupid little apps and their stupid little flaky, insignificant, trivial cyber life. And little boys addicted to video games. No, we don't want to do that, do we? Send me, Lord, I'll go. I don't ask for much. I just ask for enough for food, clothing, and if I have to go to a doctor, yeah. No. A lot of missionaries aren't doing that. And I read a story after story of these missionaries. My husband just had a vertebrae operation, or his intestines put back into his gut. And what are we sending these people over here that are a huge medical liability? Where's the healthy, fit people that can go over there and not be a burden on the church for that stuff? I don't mean to be rude and insensitive, but I sit here and go, somebody's talking about some Japanese Bible camp that they hosted, and they're praying for somebody, and they're living in Kobe and living the good life in Japan, and I'm going, what are they really doing? I will tell you something very bold. A lot of missionaries have found a very clever way to live overseas. And they're really not servants of God. They're really not concerned about the things of God, but they're interested in living the American dream abroad and then coming back and saying, we loved it over there. Was it Jim Elliott? He went to the Auca Indians somewhere down in South America and was speared and killed. His wife packed up her things and went promptly down there. You think, what? She went and said, I forgive you. That's my husband you killed. People thought that Jim wasn't doing a thing. They said, you need to get out of here. This village is too hostile. The blood of the saints is the seed of the church. He laid the groundwork. He planted the seeds. And he lost his life. His wife came in with a message of forgiveness, and even those primitive Auca Indians said, whoa, that's heavy. The village got converted. There's a woman who had a pair. There's a woman who loved her husband, had to grieve over his loss, and she went and responded to the call of God and went right into the worst place you could possibly go. How many American women I know that if somebody kills their husband, they're going to whine about it for 30 years. I know an old woman in Minnesota who had been pampered and had a life of ease, who lived right behind me in Virginia, Minnesota. We went to the same Baptist church, and I was so happy to meet her. And she had a huge problem with depression. Ever since her husband left, she was just debilitated by it. She'd cry to me, "I can't go on. I can't deal with this." Her husband never encouraged her to be a woman of God and faith. She was used to a comfortable lifestyle, and I thought, my gosh, we got women like this in the U.S. coming apart at the emotional seams and got to take medications and whining and worrying and panicking and fretting. And we got people dying and going to hell all around us, and we're sending missionaries over there whose intestines are coming out of their guts and their back is in bad shape and needs to be operated on. And the pastor of another Baptist church I went to in Hong Kong was hugely obese to the point of being unfit for any physical anything. He had to fly back to the U.S. and have a major knee replacement surgeries, and he's back in Hong Kong again, and his wife is equally huge. I notice there's not one sermon regarding gluttony. I look at this stuff and I go, are we serious? We're funding this? We're paying for this? I'm not getting what my money pays for. I don't jump into something like that because I believe a person needs to be called, and you don't force your way into missions. You have to be called. Doors have to open. I made a bold statement one day. I said 50% of all preachers in the U.S. are not called by God. It's probably more than that. People say, wow, Pacific, you sure are pretty brash to say something like that. No, I'm not. People preaching error, people preaching stuff that isn't true, they have no business in the pulpit. People pulling down $200,000 a year, pulling in $92 million in 2005, they have no business in the pulpit. Ministry is not supposed to be lucrative. Ministry is supposed to cost, and could end up costing your life. How many people, I love it when somebody says, we're going to be missionaries to Honolulu. Okay. Surf much? What you don't hear about are the people that live in Africa and serve God and really have a heart. Now, I admit, I have no desire to go where there's tsetse flies and Ebola outbreaks and infested bats and monkeys and AIDS just running rampant. No, thank you. I wouldn't want to be around that. Do you know why? Because it's as disturbing as hell. And yet, those people need the love of Jesus Christ just as much as God loved and saved me. We say, please don't send me to Africa. How many Americans would go into Tehran? I hear a lot of Christians say, I wouldn't go to the Middle East. Why not? Muslims need Jesus too. We tend to want to gravitate to our interest and our comfort zone. And we can make a very big case that what I'm interested in must be the call of God. We need to be careful. If there's one thing I'm learning about God, he says, when I am weak, Paul says, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. We in America think when I'm strong, I'm really strong. When you're strong and full of confidence in your own physical abilities, that does get in the way of the work of God. When God calls you to go to some place and you're there for a couple weeks and you bow your head and start crying and the tears fall into the hard parched dust of where you're living, and your way of getting water is not out of a faucet but bucketing it out of a hand pump well, and there is no shower, no air conditioning, no heater, and you say, God, I can't do this, and God says, now you can because you finally admitted it. That's why I brought you here. We want to be sent to the glamorous places. But what we need to ask ourselves is, are we called? And what is our motive for getting into it? We've got a woman on YouTube making quite a few videos that's attracting the attention of many people and other women saying, wow, this is amazing. Finding perfectly good stuff in dumpsters. Food, stuff that we need. And she's not turning around and selling it. She's giving what she doesn't use or need to her neighbors. But you watch. Day's going to come when the stores get wind of that, and they're going to find a way to put the kibosh on that one. Americans will give to people who waste money and live the good life, but they won't give to the real felt needs, as a rule. Yesterday, I heard the pastor say that that's why we need a bigger lobby. Oh my gosh, are we going to do another construction project? We don't like anything that cramps our style. The lobby's just fine. There's 200 people try to get through there at once. It's a little slow, but you know what? So what? We got an air-conditioned, heated building with padded pews and an upstairs balcony and a choir loft and... Sheesh. We really are a bunch of wussies in America, and we waste so much money to be comfortable, even in church. We've coddled a lot of old people in this country. A lot of Christian women get old and they live in their perfectly prescribed little ways and house and everything's neat and, you know, they don't want anything ruffled. If they hear a little bit of talking outside, they get easily rattled. And we haven't made men and women in this country strong for Christ. We haven't made them tough. We've raised a huge amount of comfortable materialists that if somebody mows an inch from their yard onto their yard, they have a complete meltdown. Your mower went onto my property. In Minnesota, I watched old men and old women. Somebody'd shovel out their sidewalk very quickly and stop. They'd stop right at the exact line, because they didn't want to shovel over onto somebody else's. And in their throwing snow, a little bit of a partial shovelful would end up landing on their sidewalk, and that would ruin that neighbor's whole day. I kid you not, I watched that. I lived in that neighborhood. The old lady I used to shovel snow for, she'd have me shovel across her lawn and connect to the next door neighbor's lawn so the mailman didn't have to walk down the sidewalk. He would walk across the front of the yard. It was a courtesy. The guy come out of his house and he said, Pacific, I do not want you shoveling that open. I don't want the mailman cutting across here. Got you. The old woman comes out and says, what did he say? I said, he doesn't want me shoveling. But we do that from the mailman. I said, you'll have to take that up with him. I don't have permission to do that. Petty. You had 3 big Rottweilers in the backyard that were dangerous and aggressive. She had a big Dodge diesel with the smokestack coming out of the back, and he'd rev that thing up down the alley and let the whole neighborhood, he had a pair. He was a disturbed individual. When the old lady built a deck with a privacy shield over the back of it because the deck was high up in her backyard and the neighbors could see them, so she built a partial privacy fence to show respect to them. They said, wow, that's rude. You put up a fence. I mean, the bitching and the complaining that goes on in American neighborhoods over stuff that to me it'd be like, you know what? Anymore these days, if I bought a house, I'm going to go into my place and almost ignore the neighbors and say, you know what? I'm not here to please you all. As long as I don't got to hear your noise. And it's sad we become that way. If I want to put up a fence in my yard, I'm going to do it. With or without your permission. As long as it doesn't interfere with your property line, who cares? I saw so much pettiness up there. And I've been reflecting in the last week, going, God, why do you have me here? I'm just driving a bus. I'm not really impacting anybody. I work in an alternate universe, as my friend said the other day. The people I work with seem to be very unreachable. In fact, if anything, they've had more of a negative impact on me than I've had a positive on them. Being around that kind of ghetto stuff gets on you. My language changes, my demeanor changes. It's hard. I would love to be able to go somewhere, even if it cost me my life, knowing that I'm actually doing something that is some good, even if I wasn't living the American dream. But God is merciful. If He wants me to go somewhere, He can make that happen. It's not about me striving and jumping up and down and trying. I just have to be sensitive to His leading. Viewers, we live in a very blessed country. And when corporate people are throwing stuff in the trash, that's messed up. When children of God are throwing their tithes and offerings, we need to start holding missionaries accountable and say, no, we're not going to fund you to send your stuff down there. In fact, we're going to contact the mission board and tell them that you're campaigning for this and tell them that they need to reconsider revoking supporting of you. That's ridiculous. You don't need your television sets and all that stuff down there. Sheesh. I wasn't even a missionary, and I lived in a flat in Hong Kong for $300 a month with a metal rusty bunk and enough room between the edge of my bed and the wall. And I was happy as all get out. Why? Because I got to talk to people from other countries that were right outside my bedroom door. 6 of us in a skinny little kitchen bumping into each other, and I had more fun cooking dinner. Here in America, you get 2 people in a huge kitchen that was as big as our entire flat was in Hong Kong, and they're bitching at each other. I'm like, gosh, this place isn't big enough for the 2 of you. And I'm stuffed in there with 6, 7 Filipinas and Indonesian women, and we're all getting along just fine. Why is that? Americans go into a store and a woman parks her car right in the middle of the aisle so that nobody can get by, and somebody actually has to be forced to say, excuse me, and she gets perturbed that she has to move. Or drivers on the road have gotten so lazy that they don't even want to push their foot, move it from the right to the left to push the brake pedal. You know, it's illegal to pass on the right, and yet here in Colorado you see people do it all the time. And they're coming dangerously close to hitting the side of my truck, my bus. They don't want to push the brake and wait 1 second for that person to make a left turn. Yeah, America's pretty petty, isn't it? Pretty stupid the way we act. And then you go to these other countries where they got real felt needs and real felt problems, and we got American spoiled brat narcissistic missionaries going, well, we want our kids to grow up with Bugs Bunny and American cultural stuff. We don't want them to be subject to the culture there. That's just too much of a shock to them. Time to cowboy up, folks. Maybe missions isn't your calling then if you want to make pampered children. Stay right here in America. You'll fit in just fine. Pass your kids on the baton of pettiness so that they can grow up too to complain about the neighbor mowing an inch over into their property too. It's disgusting. When I see $92 million thrown at Joyce Meyer's ministries, and I see people out on the front lines suffering for Jesus, it is disgusting. Benny Hinn is a charlatan and a clown and a buffoon. I would say it to his face. A complete buffoon. He does not represent Jesus Christ. Joyce Myers does not represent Jesus Christ. Joel Osteen does not represent Jesus Christ. Paul and Jan Krauss, the Bakers. I mean, I could go on and on. Kenneth Copeland, all of them. They're heretical in their teachings. Their theology is skewed, and they're pulling in big, fat money and living lavish lifestyles that even the rich people in America who are not Christians just shake their head and go, this is C3501 status? Really? Looks like somebody's profiting. You bet your bippy. Here I am, Lord, send me, broken, tempted, tried, struggling, but if you could use me somewhere else and sustain me, I'll go. Because I don't feel like I'm doing much good in America. I feel like I'm just making a paycheck to live. And it seems kind of foolish to me. I ask over and over on my channel, is it really doing any good, or I'm just attracting people of like mind? Is it really doing any good? And I get a lot of letters saying that it is. But I ask myself, am I doing any good here? And I don't really think so. Dumpster diving and missions. I think it's a good topic. I hope this video you guys get something out of it. There's poverty so deep and wide around the globe, and when you look at the way we are over here and our pettiness and our rudeness and our stupidness and throwing money at crazy stuff, what I've told you today is the truth. I'm not being insensitive to people who need knee replacements and stuff and their intestines spill out of their lining. You know, that's serious stuff. But maybe when people are getting to that point, they need to come back from the mission field and retire out. Too many missionaries are living no different than they are in America. And I'm thinking, man, where's the people on the front lines living in villages and huts? That's what I'm talking about. Laying on a bamboo floor. I remember when I went into Beth's neighbor's house, and the woman, Sally, big, she was shorter than me, but broad shoulders. She looked all the nativer. And she looked like somebody you wouldn't want to mess with in a dark alley, but she was so nice. She brought me into her home made of bamboo, and they take me by a room, and there's a Filipino laying on the floor who looks sickly. I mean, laying on the bamboo flooring. And the air can come up between there. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Oh, no, he's very sick. And I'm like, oh, that's sad. He's laying on the floor. Can we, like, put him on a bed or something? No, he hurts so much that he's comfortable right there. When Beth's mother said goodbye to me, she was a venerable old saint. We rode the tricycle together to the little Baptist church there in Miagao, and it was unbelievable. When I went to say goodbye to that woman, she was shorter than me, and she put her head right here and cried and said, God bless you, Michael. Her mother was nicer than Beth was. Beth didn't even hug her goodbye, and I remember saying something to her. I said, wow, you were pretty cold to your mom. Her mother was a very kind Christian woman. Admittedly, my motives for going back to the Philippines have not always been based in the love of Jesus. They were based on my love of just Asia and the pretty gals and just some of the things I saw. When you're called by God, you need to be called by God, and you have to have a heart for really getting into the mission mindset. And it is not supposed to be a life of comfort and ease. I look at the disciples of Jesus, and if anybody wants to model their life, they need to model it after them. Don't make yourself a martyr, but just submit to God. Not one of those disciples made big money. Not one of them pulled what Joyce Myers, Benny Hinn, and Joel Osteen and all the other crazies out there pulling in. Somehow something went askew. When we come to America in the 21st century, we think it's okay to live like kings and have Cadillacs and Mercedes and $130,000 cars and private golf courses, and you're like, are you serious? So much money in this country is thrown and peed away in the name of ministry. And I think of a venerable old woman who's frail and feeble and just goes to church Sunday after Sunday in the Philippines and was kind to me. And I look at some of the young people in the Philippines who actually do get a break and make it. They don't want to go anywhere near their parents. They're embarrassed to go back to the village. They're ashamed. I had told Beth I wish I made enough money to buy us a place and We'll move your mother out of that house and give her a nice, comfortable bedroom and let her live out her days with us. Even Beth says, you would do that? And I said, absolutely. I even told Maharani, if I had the means, I'd marry you and take you. We'd buy a simple 2-bedroom house in Cebu, and that bedroom would be for somebody who's older and can't take care of themselves. That's the heart of missions. Truly caring, getting your hands dirty and getting down to their level, not showing off your American level. I've done a huge journey in my life. I used to be caught up in pickup trucks when I lived in Prescott. How comfortable we are as Americans. The guys would stand around on Friday night out in front of Dairy Queen and go from Dairy Queen to the United Methodist Church, turn around and drag up and down Gurley Street. And all they did was talk about their engines, girls, and trucks. Girls, engines, and trucks. Over and over and over. I mean, you can only get so much conversation out of that. Clearly, these guys were lost souls. All they could think about was their pickup truck. That was their identity. And I look back on those people and I thought they wouldn't get a thing out of going to Asia. They wouldn't get a thing out of going to another country. They're very small-minded. I like my truck, but my truck does not define me. My truck is not my life. It's a vehicle, it's a tool, it's a means. It's a very expensive contraption just to get my butt to and from work. It's quite ridiculous. I'd rather live in a place where I could use my dollars for something wiser and where transportation isn't a huge chunk out of my annual income. It costs to live in America. It costs to do everything we do. Those images from the village of Miyaga will always stick with me. It was so much information overload that I'm still processing it. The contrast is huge. Beth had grown accustomed to living in Hong Kong and had become somewhat of a spoiled brat herself. Affluent societies and materialism really does corrupt people. We got people in America with felt needs and we're throwing good, viable food in the trash can. A big box outside Toys R Us outside the dumpster saying, toys for the clearance table. Tossed in the trash. The woman picked them up and took them all home. You go into those stores and say, I'm wondering if any of your food, I can come and take it off your hands. Oh, no, we have a policy. We don't do that. 2 days later, they're out the back door tossing it into the roll-off dumpster. Amazing. Good for people that are smart enough to go get the goods. I don't have a problem with that. Some people think dumpster diving is beneath them. Hey, they just haven't hit the skids yet. Better to get some good, clean American food still in the box unopened than to go to Manila and eat leftover garbage scraps of half-eaten food roasted in a pot where you risk disease and sickness. Folks, if you really want to study poverty, look at Manila. Look at the shanty towns. Thousands of people crammed in there, the train going by, these people running around all over the tracks in the way. I mean, it's complete chaos. If God wanted Pacific to go to the middle of that, I would do it. Yes, it would be utterly disturbing, but so what? If my life can be used doing something better than what I'm doing now, I'm in. This is Pacific signing off. Bye-bye.